Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Mary Jacobs, your host for the Tao of Oneness podcast. So I'm back again, and this time I kind of just want to recap from our last podcast. I know a lot of what I tried to capture during that podcast was my path for this life and how it led me to get to this moment. My hopes were to show my own humility and humbleness, and also share some of the fumbles and stumbles that I have had along my own path. I say fumbles and stumbles because stumbles mean that, like, as I'm learning new things, um, as we learn new things, we're gonna stumble like a baby learning how to walk. And so there was a huge learning curve in almost everything that I experienced in my life, and I'm sure you guys can relate. However, the fumbles in my life where I actually was given an opportunity to actually show, you know, based on what I've already known. So I've gone through that learning curve. I've kind of got a little bit of experience behind my belt, and the universe throws me the ball. Like, hey, the ball is in your court. We're going to toss it to you. You take it and run with it, and I would stall or, all these different mishaps, but I would fumble the ball, basically. I'd be hyped up like, yeah, I got this. I'm going to be able to do this, that, and the other. I was a lot of talk. I learned all these new things, but when it came to put those things into action, I was not fully prepared or ready, or fear took over. And for whatever reason, I fumbled it. And that happened also more times than I'd like to admit on my path, honestly, where I knew where I was being guided to go. And for whatever reasons and circumstances or excuses that I could come up with, distractions, I would constantly create the reality to where I couldn't, or I didn't, basically, continue down that path. And honestly, that in itself was another learning curve. So they were kind of working together in that. But back to the point, I know that there was not a lot that you can really condense from a person's life into like a 45-minute to an hour podcast. There's so many nuances and truths that kind of get missed or glazed over when you're trying to explain, the complexity of a human life. So this episode right here is really want to go into a specific aspect that I kind of touched on briefly last time. And that is really just talking about transformation itself, the idea of growth, and, what is spookism? And first of all, I am very deeply spiritual. My religion is gratitude and love. However, I do definitely believe in God and what that means to me. So I just want to put that out there as well. I have friends of every single faith. I have friends of all different backgrounds, races, creeds, colors. And I choose what I value, and what I'm choosing is to see all as my brothers and sisters, not only as a human race, but also spiritually. I look at, the animals and the trees and the plants also as our fellow brothers and sisters. So I want to start with the premise of that. So therefore, anything that I may say that may be controversial in the outer world, I in no way, shape, or form am meaning that here. However, I understand that, people will interpret information how they interpret it, and that also is amazing and part of our process, uniquely ours to walk through. So yes, I want to kind of get onto the premise of what transformation is, and I'm going to do that from the aspect of how I see universal consciousness or God. And I also want to say that God to me is an energy and a presence, similar to, like I said before, like love just is. It's more than an emotion. It is a power. It is a generator. It is very much a state of consciousness. And it is very high vibrational, and it's similar to like peace would be, like real peace. Like just, and I've experienced that before. When I think I told you guys when I first came back from my first trip to Guatemala, when I had that huge transformation, lost like 30 pounds. I was in such a deep state of peace. God made him herself known to me. In every cell sung the songs of God's glory. That state of peace is what I wanted to try to help everyone find, to where I was kind of force feeding, remember, which was another learning curve, thinking I was doing the right thing, but it was from a place of purity and love, because I wanted everybody to experience what I had experienced, what I was experiencing. So knowing that universal consciousness, what I call God, permeates all things, including the so-called empty space. And there's nowhere that God is not, because God is all, right? Kind of like redundant. Continuously, we go back right back to the first. The first is the last, and the last is going to be the first, because it's all the same. Everything is an aspect of God, expressing and having an experience of witnessing itself while simultaneously being witnessed. Okay, and my idea is that humility is the knowing that everything is an extension of you, and that you are an extension of everything, unified by that field of consciousness that we call God. So with that understanding and that knowing that God is all, and it is stated in all of the ancient texts around the globe, and from the spiritual teachings to the religious teachings, that God is all. There's nothing that God is not. Okay? And so humility, I feel like, is knowing that. Knowing that everything is an extension of God. That means that includes me, and that includes all the things external to me that I may judge as right, wrong, good, bad, light, dark. If God is all, then God is all. So in essence, we're also saying that God is us and we are God. And so on that premise, and bringing it even more personal now to just to individual human aspect, we can say that we are each at the different unique levels of knowing and understanding that truth and what it sincerely means, okay, in the context of our lives and how we live and how we relate and how we perceive, right? So to give a story about my own early journey, I'm going to say of grandiosity, which is the opposite of humility, was that when I first came on this journey, this was prior to me going on the trip. It was right before I left to go on the trip. I started getting a lot more memories, and that's when my gifts and things started kind of tapping back in. And I had done Reiki. I think at this point I was up to like Reiki level 2 before I got to the third and last level of Reiki, the Usui Reiki. And I was, having breakthroughs with past lives. And honestly, there were moments where I was getting glimpses of living a life that was very grand and very important, very influential. And not only that, but it was being coincided through, I had started using like oracle cards and angel boards, and that's when I really started diving in before I had any like really safeguards around me in place outside of, God looking out for me and my own spiritual team and archangels. However, there were still cracks, and there were spaces where, I was being interfered with. There was inner interference from my ego, and there was outer interference from, interdimensional and multidimensional energies that were, not coming from the highest or a place of, true love. And so I started really believing that I was, hot stuff or big, my bigger than my britches and this powerful blah, 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 blah. And I also started associating a lot of my life with specific past life impressions. And I'm not saying that those past lives were not real, because they were and they are. However, the memories and how they were coming through were jaded, and they weren't given the whole story. And so there was a lot of misinterpretation there, because there wasn't a lot of clarity, and my ego was able to jump onto what it felt like it wanted to jump onto and piece together this story. Like I said, that was not the whole story. And actually, in greater context, was false, because of the fact that it was like, have you ever heard of, like, it was taken out of context? So, like we say, like, even in today's terms with technology and things, like, people can take sound bites of like a whole interview, and they will take specific sound bites and send that out to the world to misconceive people to think that a person was saying or feeling or doing certain things that they were not, because it was taken out of context, because it was only a sound bite, and everything that before it and after it gave the full story to give context. So that's exactly what was happening to me in the spiritual level when I first began this journey, in a more conscious way. When I was a child, it was more, it was happening to me because I was wide open. I was in that pure state. I hadn't lived a lot of life, but I was not around people that really understood it and appreciated it. When I got to my adult years and my gifts started kicking back in, and I started asking questions that I didn't even know to ask when I was a kid, that was when I was in my more active journey in being really a part of, where my path was going to lead me, because there's always free choice as well. Okay. So during that time, come back, I was above myself, and really subtle though. It was I had this air of, arrogance that was subtle. I felt it. It made me feel good. And life started to kind of coalesce around that. And that is why I think it was such a huge breakthrough when I actually did go on my trip, because that is when I finally saw God in all things and everybody. It like shattered that sense of like you are better than anybody, or that anybody else could be better than you. That was when it really anchored for me that we are all aspects of God having an experience. And so when God wants to bless you, it will use a different aspect of itself, consciously or unconsciously, to bless you. I have been in that state where I didn't know why God put something on my heart to do something or say something to another person. And yet when I say it or do this, they will relate to me how they prayed to God for yada yada whoop de whoop, or no one else knew but God, da 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 da. So it was like this moment of connection, and that's because we're all connected. We're all related through this consciousness, this web of flow of energy that is God. And so that's just the premise. Now we take all of that understanding, getting beyond, and I'm not saying, let me also say this. when I say that we're all connected and we're all everything is an aspect of God, interdimensionally, whether it's this universe, this planet, another galaxy, the multiverse, and then also we spoke a little bit about how the different layers of consciousness and vibration, which separate the fields, or dimensions, everything is God. No matter where science takes us, no matter how much spiritual awakening we have, the more we realize that even on the smallest, minutest level, nowhere in the cosmos, no matter where you are in the cosmos, it's still connected and conscious and aware through the aspect of God, which we call, universal consciousness, source, all the things. So with all of that and getting to that premise where we have that humility, that unconditional love, and knowing that with this whole platter and buffet of experience and spices and herbs and delicacies and flavors, doesn't mean we have to gorge ourselves on it all. There's certain things we have taste. There's certain things we like and certain things we don't like. Certain things we enjoy, certain things we don't enjoy. So knowing all of that means that just because we know that this is all available and it's all a part of our experience and of God experiencing itself through us and everything else, doesn't mean we have to play with everything. It's just available to us should we want to. Okay? And then we get over to where I started with, what is spookism? And what is all this energy that, is going on right now on the planet about transformation and the idea of growth, etc. And it's kind of like, it's because everyone is now, it's because right now, there's a heightened moment where the ages have shifted. Consciousness itself within every single thing has taken an uptick. It's up leveling. It's coming back around, going from, where the dark ages, if you think about the yugas, the Kali yugas and I don't remember all the yugas, so forgive me, but Kali yuga is the one that's been thrown around the most because that's the one we were just in. And now we're kind of coming in around the bend and everything is heightened now. Well, when we're in that space of the light turning on and getting brighter, first it's dim and then it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter, we're able to see where, okay, there's a mess over there that I didn't know was there. And that over there that I thought was, the scary man in the corner was just like the coat rack, think about real life experiences. Well, as more light is being ignited within us, the more we're able to see, the more that we're able to discern, the more that we're able to consciously choose, because we're now more aware. And awareness does bring choice, because when you're ignorant, they say ignorance is bliss. I mean, I can't really say that that's necessarily true, because I've been in an ignorant state before where all the things that I'm talking about now I had no idea about, previously. And I was not having a very blissful experience just because I was ignorant of if anything, my life has gotten better now that I'm no longer ignorant. But that's a whole nother side note. The point is, when you're aware, you can make better choices. When you're unaware, you're limited. Okay? And so with our consciousness lifting and rising, there is more light being shown and more availability to what is, and what has always been is opening up to us. So therefore we can make better or just different, choices and have broader experiences. And so I really, in my understanding, the difference that I would say between like true transformation and true spirituality, would be like basically the difference between you taking knowledge that you are learning and you really apply it to yourself, right? So, like I was saying before, if you trust your mentors and your teachers and you apply their teachings to your own life and you receive something beneficial and something that is aligned and something that expands you, something that brings you greater joy or opportunity, you take that with you. And the same is if you get, something other than any benefit or nothing at all. You take that understanding and now that new wisdom, and then it's your duty to own that truth, to live that truth, and to trust your own findings, regardless of what everyone else is having and their experience with it. Doesn't mean that the teaching itself is wrong. What I think it means more so is that that specific teaching probably just was not part of your path and therefore right for you, at least this lifetime or this current state of your lifetime. So I think everything is always in a constant state of flux, and it depends on where we are, any pinpoint on that journey, on that map, and based on the choices we've already made and the choices that we know we want to make for our future, which can always shift and change, of course. However, back to, you find it trusting your own findings. So if your teachers were, wrong, or their teachings just didn't resonate with you, or you didn't get the results that you feel like, they say you should have gotten or other people have gotten, that's okay. That's okay. As long as you're willing to really be with that and be honest about that, and then, be willing to correct and course correct, okay? We've all been wrong before, and I'm sure I probably will be again. I think I said that before as well. But I really sincerely trust that at any moment in time, I don't want to sit and talk about anything that I have not experienced unless I only do it just for in general, like generalization, but just be like, I have no feedback on this. I haven't tested it myself, so I'm not really sure how it works, how it doesn't work. I just know that this is something that has been going around in these circles, yada, yada, whoop, whoop, whoop. If it's something that I have experienced, I can only give you my experience of it. It does not mean in any way, shape, or form that you would have the exact same experience. You could have a huge awakening over something that, I got nothing from, and then vice versa. Okay? I also really, is it wrong to just regurgitate other people's information that you haven't applied to yourself? I can't really say that it is or it isn't. What I can say is just to be honest and transparent about that, because I think transparency is key. Not only transparency, but authenticity and being real. Authenticity is being like genuine, being honest. Even if you have to honestly bow out and say, I don't want to have this conversation, or honestly say that this is making me feel uncomfortable, or honestly say that, oh my gosh, like I had a fantastic experience at this, that, and the other. However, I don't really feel comfortable talking about it right now in this moment. You see what I mean? That's what honesty and transparency means. It doesn't mean you just like have to always just be this constant open book where everybody can just read all of your, most intimate, secrets and depths of your being, or that you're obligated to tell the whole world all of those things. Privacy is still important. We are and to honor people's privacy and vice versa. Even when it comes to the spiritual realm and intuition and, clairvoyance, clairaudience, all of the clairs, the spiritual gifts that we have, there's a certain type of hygiene that we have to keep ourselves as a clear channel, which is also always evolving, because we're expanding and seeing how that itself grows and evolves, which allows more and more of those gifts to turn on and things, but also the responsibility to our fellow neighbors, that trust in being a responsible practitioner of those gifts, to allow people to have their privacy. And even if something comes up to you that maybe, that person isn't ready or willing to share, doesn't mean that you as a clairvoyant need to bring it up. If they feel like that's something they want to discuss or want to have a conversation with you about, then they will. And it's also your responsibility not to go around and spread that or say a word, not even a hint, to anyone else about it. That also comes with maturity on the path. I'm not saying that we've all been there. We've all, had our experiences, whether it was, elementary school, middle school, high school, where gossip and things get started. And that is just, it's just bad hygiene. And sometimes even we can I've been guilty of that myself. I'm not judging anyone or myself about it. What I am saying is that's another part of the learning on the path of truly honing your gifts and being a responsible channel of those gifts out to the world, and that makes you a trusted confidant with source in numerous forms, at all times. So, back to that whole premise of what is spookism and things. I think that is when you are still not spookism to me versus the true spiritual path of the initiate. One is taken more seriously, and one is taken, I don't mean like, oh my God, I don't have fun and I just have to be this, devout, just wear all, brown robes. I'm not saying that is what we have to do. That is a path, but it's not necessary. What I am saying is that a true spiritual, path is one that is honorable in the fact that we genuinely are trying to do what we believe and feel at the moment that is of the highest. There's always that forethought and that understanding before we do anything, most times at least, of what are the ramifications of this. There's a forward thinking about it, of the consequences of our actions and our thoughts and our deeds, our words. And versus when you're in spookism, which is another part of it, because in the beginning I was in spookism. I was just out here wanting to, hear about psychics and hear about, all my deceased ancestors and what they had to say. And there was this moment of like awe and ooh and, the glam of it all and the shock of it all. And, I was drawn to that. It was enticing. I'm not saying it was good or bad, but it wasn't really much thought about the greater ramifications of this. There wasn't so much forethought about the benefits or, flaws in poking and prying and peering into other people's lives or allowing other people to pry into ours. And, that can get kind of in some of the other styles and types of spiritual teachings and things that just do not resonate with me. And I could tell when certain things were a little bit too open and not like, kind of the path narrowing. I went on the path that started narrowing in. I went on the path that kind of narrowed in a little bit. I think there's something about that in the Bible where a parable about, it was easier for like a camel or something to get through an eye of a needle versus a man in sin or something like that. Don't quote me. I enjoy all the different texts, but I have not memorized them all. From the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, which is, Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, that's an aspect of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, but, all the Vedas, the Vedic text, and of course the Bible, the Quran, all the ancient texts, even beyond that, that I've kind of delved in on different points of my journey. And I'm sure there are other kind of, analogies in other texts that also kind of talk about the narrowing of the path at some point on our journey, whether it's this life or another life. We're all on this unique journey and we'll get there. However, I think that at some point, when we get to that narrowing of the path, we start throwing away all the things that don't really matter. We throw away all the points that aren't really in the divine service. All going back to the point of, like, instead of seeing ourselves as separate, and especially when you truly have a devotion and unconditional love of God, and therefore life and animals and the sky, beauty, the natural beauty of it all, the experience of that. When you really start recognizing that God is in all these things and God is talking to me through these trees and through the butterfly and the dragonfly, through the wind rustling on my shoulder, through my plants and the flowers, through the music that's coming on. When I need that inspiration, I take that as a gift. When I look up and see a billboard that has exactly the message that I needed to hear, all of these different things are ways that the universe, God, universal consciousness is reaching out to us, and you start owning the fact that God really is within me and within the all, and is guiding me through all these experiences. The path narrows. Then you become more responsible and accountable in your words and in your actions. You're more forward thinking about the consequences of anything that you may say, do. Where you might plant a tree, where you're going to build your home, the path that you may take, how you interact with a stranger. All of these things start having more meaning to you because you know God is within the all. Your path narrows. It narrows because now you're not so willing to pry, and it's like that whole premise of, as above, so below, as within, so without. And it's like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's when you really start owning those golden rules, owning those universal laws. And it's like, if you don't enjoy people prying into all of your things, if you don't enjoy the thought of having someone spiritually interfering in your life, then why would we actually do those things to someone else, especially when we know we're interconnected? And that is another aspect of God having a different, unique experience, right? Okay, so that was I hope that made sense, guys, with the difference between the, quote unquote spookism and the true spiritual aspirant on the path who's actually honed and gotten beyond that, because I feel like that's still part of it. There is no either or. I think that quote unquote spookism is part of your journey and part of the path to getting to that narrowing of the path. And that narrowing of the path is like leading you to a unification or to a point of pure consciousness where all just simply is, and you own and become the Christed beingness, God consciousness in form. And again, these are my understandings based on my personal experiences and based on my understanding from the texts that I have read, the watching and hearing the experiences of other people, and tell me their interpretations and their real experiences with them. This is coming from my own understanding based on past life impressions that I've had, and I'm sure everyone, or at least the majority of everyone, has had, of actually touching or unifying that Christed consciousness within them at least one lifetime. So that is where I'm kind of going with the premise of transformation and how all of those things are kind of unified from the kind of, I guess, infancy stage of when we're just starting out on the path, through the forgetfulness of coming from our mother's womb, knowing that the majority of us, even though we may have impressions from the spiritual realm of our, whole spectrum of lives coming into this one life, usually it dissipates by like age 5, sometimes younger, sometimes a little older. And some people actually really are able to hold on to it and anchor that. And those are the ones who come in walking as the masters, like Jesus, like so many other masters on the planet that have done those things, that kept their knowledge. It comes in the of like Babaji. She was, Babaji and Mataji. Mataji was his sister and is his sister. And just really having beings that are seemingly otherworldly. Lord Krishna is another one. And yet there has been proof, Jesus came here, he had his own experiences, though he had his memories and his knowing and his anchoring of his true spiritual connection with the Godhead. And yet he still went through his own training and honing of his skills now that he was in another human form with a family and blood running through his veins and all that stuff to really anchor it. So he could go and, fulfill his highest service as a master teacher of the rights of God consciousness. I digress. So today I kind of was a little all over the place, and I'm aware of that. And yet I have one more thing that I would like to kind of put in to this podcast. And all of these things that I'm talking about, these are just the last podcast episode and this one for 2025 is when I'm starting out with the premise of finally being transparent about my values and more of my own unique experiences, and not saying that I'm right or wrong or better than anybody, because everyone is entitled to their own views and experiences. Okay? I think what I really want to do is just, one, prove to myself that I need to get over the fear of allowing myself to be seen and heard as who I truly am. I have to be honest and transparent about that. That's one thing that has kept me stuck, and that's one thing that has kept me from really putting out my podcast, even though I have so much I want to share and say and talk about and maybe, and have interviewees at some point. Right now, I'm really just kind of getting consistent with staying the path and not being afraid to allow myself to be heard, to allow my truth to finally be seen. And that's the last piece I think that has been blocking me from really coming forward with the truth of my full service to humanity. And the overcoming of that, which is also, like I said, been kind of why I've been sporadic and not really 100% with the podcast or consistent with it. That right there, that is going to be the key, me breaking out of that mold. And this podcast is what has constantly been my accountability factor, because I know when I say I'm going to do something in 2 weeks and then it takes me 3 or a month or 2. I'm very aware of that, and then there's that fear of still being inside. It's easier for me to talk with people in real life, to host groups, to see people one-on-one as client and practitioner. I've had amazing experiences with it for years, and yet I have been guided at my core to pull back from that for a time. I don't know for how long, but my own guidance from God was to pull back from that, because I know, that I have so much I want to share. And so with that knowing and God being like, and you're ready and you've been preparing. This isn't the first time I've had a podcast. And yet this is the next part of my path to overcoming the fear, to really being able to reach more people in a shorter amount of time and allow my voice to be out there with all the other beings out there that are also taking their stand and saying, enough is enough. Fear be damned. It's time for us to stand in our true service to humanity and be uncomfortable with it. And allow other people who may not understand us to be uncomfortable with it, and that's okay. It's not for everybody. And to trust that those that are meant to hear my voice will hear it. To trust that hopefully that'll also be the inspiration. If what I'm saying doesn't directly resonate with you and you don't have similar experiences or understandings of it, or it doesn't make you curious to go on a research, maybe it's aggravating you and you feel like I should be doing this a different way, that might be your sign that maybe you should have a podcast, you should have a platform, and then you can be someone that is instead putting your voice out there. And maybe your podcast is about teaching those of us who are trying to podcast, who are more, intimate and used to intimate settings, who are now being asked through divine to step up and be more in the mainstream, to allow love to reign supreme instead of fear. Maybe you can be someone who critiques us and helps us get better. So there's still service there, even if you don't want to talk about spirituality. Anyhow, so I just wanted to be honest about that as well. Like these few episodes, and there may be one or two more before it's all said and done, they're really on the premise of me being honest and transparent about who I am, my values, some of my personal experiences. I know some of you may not want to hear all of that, so just bear with me, because that's a part of me setting the foundation of who I am into what I'm building. So therefore, once I get to the next level of sharing, I will have built that solid foundation first and foremost about, the Tao of Oneness and the unique perspective that I'm bringing to the table and as service to the world. Okay, I hope that made sense. And the biggest, hugest part right now is that I'm overcoming my fear, which is why I probably rumble on and I double talk and I get forgetful because I don't have an outline. I literally just decide that, like, you know what, today I just feel inspired to speak to my audience, whoever they are. And God just guide my heart to speak what is true and what is relevant to right now. And so that's where I am right now today, last episode, and like I said, a few more. To bring it back, because I told you I'm rambling, the shamanic life path is something that is dear and near to my heart. The reason why I say the shamanic life path is something near and dear to me is because it is so entrenched in bringing spiritual, vibrational, cosmic energy into form. Okay? And when I say into form, I mean that everything that, in the context of we just been talking about for the last 40 minutes, is of God being permeating everything is the shamanic life. So the shamanic life is basically seeing no separation between the material world and God. It is the ownership of that and the living it in every breath and every moment. There's always a sign. There's always a higher meaning. There's always a message. Okay? And just really honing ourselves to be the tuning fork of God, to be able to decipher, first of all, witness, understand, and recognize, and then decipher those messages. That to me is what the true shamanic life path is all about. And those intuitive abilities really coming out. It also, from my personal experience, because I know that in my own understanding, in my ownership of what I told you I value and what is truly meaningful to me, is the shamanic life path and loving all as my brother and sister, whether I agree with you, whether I want to be around you or not. I love you and I see God within you and you are having your experience. Okay. I also, see that worldwide, and I see that in the cosmos. I see that in the seeds that I'm growing for my garden this year. Part of mastery and of the shamanic life path is also having mastery over the extremes of existence. That spiritual training and having skills, of skills of service and service to divine. Like, you really got to have those skills in service to the divine through spiritual training. And the best way that you're going to get spiritual training is when you really master the extremes of existence. And my family who knows me knows that I can go and have been from extremes. I just, that was, and people used to tell me that, and I would just like, you know what? Hey, I got to admit it. You're right. It's either hot or cold, damn it. You know what I mean? But through mastering being hot, and then mastery of being cold, and then mastery of being present, and then the mastery of being fully disconnected, just the mastery of being like broken and financially broke, and the mastery of being wealthy and full and put together, and like the mastery of all of those things brought forth an inner balance, because I knew no matter what extreme that I found myself on, I knew I was going to be okay. I knew how to handle myself in either situation. I knew that there was a trust in the guiding force of my life and of all life, that no matter where you are, if you can really tap into that source and trust with all your might, the highest outcome always is going to be fulfilled. Every single time, without fail. And I say that with so much force because I have lived it. I have experienced it. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've tasted it. I've cried with it. There are different aspects of the divine through, different cultures and, different belief systems. Those deities are very much active and alive, and they will interact with you based on how you interact with them, especially if you don't have a relationship. And I have had experiences, to give an example, during the whole COVID thing, I think I had this is a more recent time, because I told you I was with my teachers, Sri and Kira, from the first time that I met them in person, 2013, up until like recently. And they still have a very near and dear place in my heart. Kira as well, even though she's still here. Her husband just transitioned like a year or so ago, a year and a half ago. And like, I have to say that the last time that I went down to, they're no longer in Guatemala, but now they're in Ecuador. Last time I went to Ecuador, and I was there for an event. It was right during the height of COVID. It was like 2021. And, right after the height of COVID. COVID was kind of dying down. They had come out with all these vaccines and things of that nature. And Ecuador is one of the countries that, as long as you had, your stamp within a certain amount of time prior to your flight saying that you were COVID free, then you could fly. You still had to wear masks and all that kind of stuff. But, you didn't have to have a COVID vaccine in order to come into their country. So it was perfect. I didn't, have it. And so I went down there and had an amazing time. And then it was time for us to get ready in order to get back into U.S., you had to have another COVID vaccine. And, not vaccine, excuse me, I meant to say a COVID test proving that you were negative. So I went down there. I knew I was straight. God, I just knew. And upon getting that test, mine had come back positive. Me and like three other people, it popped up positive. And everybody there was up in this uproar. There was still fear around it. There was just a lot going on at that moment. And all I could do was trust. The first thing that stood out to me was the way we immediately were treated and looked at. It was like we were there for a spiritual event. However, immediately, because fear came in, judgment was right there behind it. Fear and judgment immediately, and anger crept in. we were escorted to a different part of the property where there were, like a living quarter, situation with different rooms and stuff, bathroom, everything. They brought us food and, made sure we had water and everything, but we had to be, placed over here in quarantine away from the rest of the group for the last like couple of days, like 3 days of the event. And, I think there was a doctor on site or whatever, and they were like, hey, we're giving everybody else, more tests because everybody now wants to be retested, right? And so with the retesting, they were like, hey, I don't know if you're going to be able to make your flight, because these tests can da-da-da-da-da. You already popped a pilot. You might as well just redo your flight and just stay here the extra like 7 to 14 days. And then you'll be able to, no problem, be able to get a flight back. And I was just adamant, like, that was a false flag. I don't know what's going on, what happened, but absolutely not. Absolutely not. I was one of the first ones to sign up, like, hey, yes, I want to be retested. It was a fee. You had to pay the fee because, part of the group, you got one. Yeah, I want to get another, you had to pay out of pocket. No problem. I paid the other, the fee, and I went over there, got retested. Of course, the walk of shame, right? Everybody's up there. There's like a tent, and me and like the other people walking up there, the quarantine crew, and everybody's whispering and stuff, and it's just weird. But Shree was buoyant, and he, Kira was, she didn't want to be part of it because she just wanted to be secluded, and that was her prerogative, and I can understand, if there is COVID floating around, no one just wants to willingly be around it. But Shree was down there, and he was like, it is what it is, and, we're all getting tested. I'm getting my blood test and everything, and, welcome on, let's go on and get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was the only one that really approached us and was buoyant and made us feel accepted and all the things, right? So we went inside the tent, and I got my second COVID test, and I went back down, and I did. I prayed. At this point, I was calling. I knew they were like, okay, your flight, you're not going to get the results back for your flight by this time, but you have to push it back at least a day or two. You sure you don't want to just stay? I mean, they were like, we're going to have other things. You can just come to us to some of these other ancient sites, and we're going to make it a whole thing. And I was just like, no, because it was also right before my daughter's birthday. And we had plans to go to the beach. The hotel had already been taken care of. And I was like, I'm not staying here. I knew I came here for a reason. That reason has completed. If anything, this is going to be a testament to my faith and my trust in God. We were at a tributary of the Amazon River where our quarantine quarters were. Literally, like right behind the house, there was this tributary of the Amazon, just roaring. So every day that I was there, morning and evening, and anytime I felt called, I would go down to the river and I would just be one with God and the energy of the tributary. And I prayed to the Holy Divine Mother. And at this time, I was aware of the Orisha Oshun. And I don't know why, there's just different aspects of time when certain aspects of the Godhead will come to me. And at this point, Oshun came to me very strongly as that divine feminine, like rebellious nature. And that's what I was exhibiting in that moment, I guess, and so which is why she kind of came to me, and with that river, that roaring energy of the river. And so I was just like, I prayed, and I was just like, if it's your will, then show me. If I need to stay, then I'll stay. If I need to go. And I kept getting, change it for the next day. Change your flight for the next day. You're going home. You're going home. Hold the course. Trust. So every day, fervent prayer and trust and surrendering. Everybody else tried to tell me it was not going to work. Even the Shree and Kira themselves at this point weren't getting the same guidance because it was my guidance. And so they really in their hearts did not believe that I was going to be able to make this work. And in my eyes, I wasn't making anything work. This was divine at work. And if God told me that I was going home, then I had to stick to it. And I proclaimed it everywhere. God said, I'm going home. I know I'm going home. I've changed my flight to this date. I need you to go ahead and make a reservation for the car to come get me on this evening at this time so I can make my flight. I was even, and so up to the night, I had to leave by like 11 p.m. that night to be able to make my flight at like 4 or 5 a.m. the next morning. Okay. The results hadn't came in the night of. It was dark outside. It was like 10 p.m. Okay. I have all my stuff, all my shit packed. I have to get, it gives me, because this is just one of many experiences. This is just one little minuscule experience. I had my stuff packed. I was sitting by the door. Everybody thought I was crazy. I was sitting by the door, had my stuff packed, and I was just waiting for the lady who was there working with them to get the results. At like 10, like somewhere, it was somewhere that evening, like right before I needed to leave. I was like, she came down there. She was like, oh my gosh, Mary. She had her mask on. Here's your test results. And she was like, it's negative. She was like, we've already called transportation. They're on the way to come get you. And then before she left, she was like, we're all shocked. She said, how did you know? She was like, how did you know? And I said, because I trusted God. God told me this was going to happen. And so I said, I'm going to trust. And so that's how I knew. The trust became a knowing that was realized, and everyone witnessed that. Okay? Everyone witnessed that. Ironically, there was someone else who was there that was more well known in the spiritual community. I do not, just to leave that there, but they also were able to leave as well, but due to other circumstances, you know what I'm saying? And I just had my own faith to be able to get me through, and was able to get to the airport and do what I needed to do, and came home in enough time to be able to make my daughter's birthday, vacation that we had already planned way before I went on this trip. The main part about this that I also forgot to share was the morning of, because remember, this was like 3 days prior, like from the time I got tagged with COVID to the time I actually left was about 3 days. The third day, which is the day that I told you where the test results were supposed to come back, and the day that I was supposed to leave that night in order to make my flight for the following day. That morning when I went down after fervent prayer and trust and surrendering and thankfulness and gratitude to God, who I felt in the energy was Oshun. That morning before the test results came in, I went down normally, the same little moss-covered steps and the trees and everything kind of guiding my path all the way down to right up to the river's edge, where I would sit on the rocks, and I have a picture of me actually on the rocks there. When I got down, the moss on the stairs going down was yellow. There were little yellow flowers on either side of the stairs. And there was yellowing moss going up the trees facing the river. I immediately just started pouring tears, crying. I mean, like, I could barely even see to make my way down to the river's edge as I just, thank you. Thank you. It was like my confirmation. And also, ironically, the color for Oshun is yellow. The aspect of the Divine Mother that came to me while I was there at the river's edge came in the form of what we consider Oshun. Now, I'm not saying that I don't even know enough, and I'm not, all I know is that I was blessed. I was blessed, and I am thankful, and I am grateful. I've not had another experience from that similar energy since being back, but what I can say is that grace is real. Grace is real. And when you have a pure heart and you reach out with sincerity and unconditional love and surrender to God to touch you back with that love that you've poured out to it, her, him, whatever you want, it's universal consciousness. It is all. Miracles happen every single time. And I want to end on that note. I really do. I'll end on that note. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that has listened, that has stayed the course. if you did listen to it to the end, again, this is my opportunity to really get over my own fear of being out here and being heard and allowing myself to be seen and found, to give some little pieces of my own unique journey as the foundation as I'm building on it, and also sharing experiences. And I'd like to hear your feedback about what you liked about this, what you didn't like, your experiences, your own aha moments. When has the divine showed up in your life? Like, let's create and make it okay to have these type of conversations more. There's so much fear and anger and doubt and worry and shame and guilt going on in the world. And I'm not saying that we're supposed to put our heads in the sand, because damn it, you deserve to be upset about it. And what are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And what I've known and seen firsthand is that love and putting out that energy that helps nullify hate is love. Put out more love, put out more community, more compassion, more understanding, more forgiveness into the world. You don't have to do it on a platform like I'm doing, or so many other people out here that are actually out here doing their work publicly. You can do yours in your own family, at your job. You can do yours in your everyday life. But just find moments when you can really put out that pure energy of love and compassion and understanding. Look into someone's eyes and listen to them intently. Really hear them and let them know that you're being present. Be present with yourself and your body. And when you're having a moment, when you're flaring up, don't try to sugarcoat it. Because also, I know me and some other people I know in the spiritual community will try to gloss over it. Oh, it's going to be fine. Oh, I'm just tripping. Oh, make excuses for it. Like, it took a while for me to really allow my mind and my body to have its due. To really let myself fall apart and break apart and hold myself through it while I'm constantly whispering and kissing my arms. I love you. And I still I love you. There's nothing you've done or could ever do that will keep me from loving you. Have we made mistakes? Have we done things we might cringe at? Have you witnessed things that have really made you cringe? It's okay. I love you. I love you. We're safe. I got you. Let it out. Feel it. Cry. Wail. Be angry. Feel it all. And still, I love you. That too is very important. To have that same compassion and understanding and forgiveness for ourselves that we're willing to have with the world. And that's where the true healing begins, which I think I'm going to talk about that next week. Next 2 weeks. I think I'm going to talk about that, the power of forgiveness, and really going into the dark night of the soul and what shadow work really is. Thank you guys again. This is a healing journey for me, as I hope becomes at least at some point a healing journey for you all. I appreciate you for tuning in today. I really, really am grateful for your presence here on the planet. Together we are making a difference. Okay? So until the next time we have the opportunity to be together again, may you know all is truly well, as long as we keep love at the forefront of our minds and our hearts, and we become the difference that we want to see in the world. Together we are better, and we will get through this, guys. And love is going to lead the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I bow before you all. Namaste. Thank you.